February 4th, 1974. A group known as the Symbionese Liberation Army kidnaps Patty Hearst, the daughter of newspaper mogul Randolph Hearst, from her Berkeley apartment.
When she was kidnapped, she was locked in a closet in an apartment in Oakland. She was taken from the closet and blindfolded, and guns were put to her head, and they pulled the trigger, click. So she was tortured mentally and emotionally.
The SLA says she is a prisoner of war in a battle between leftist militants and what they call the corporate fascist state. As the daughter of Randolph Hearst, Patty is a high-value target. Soon after her capture, the SLA begins releasing audio tapes to the media.
Mom, Dad, I'm okay. I had a few scrapes and stuff, but they washed them up and they're getting okay.
When they saw the reaction to that first tape, then they knew they had something. And they really worked it. The tapes were chilling.
I'm with a combat unit that's armed with automatic weapons. They're perfectly willing to die for what they're doing.
We couldn't turn away from that story. Nobody could stop reading it or stop watching it. So as long as they held Patty Hearst captive, they more or less had the rest of us captive.
The Symbionese Liberation Army is a small band of violent extremists whose roots go back to the anti-war and civil rights protest movements of the 1960s.
The Symbionese Liberation Army, the Weather Underground, Prairie Fire, Brown Berets, Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army, Vincent Ramos Brigade, all of these were different but the same. The Oakland school superintendent, Dr. Marcus Foster, had been assassinated by the Symbionese Liberation Army.
You had no idea if it was a hodgepodge of wackos, if it was some kind of indeed well-trained militia.
But there is one certainty about the SLA.
We were convinced that the SLA was a legitimate threat.
Law enforcement's objective is to rescue Patty Hearst. They begin at her apartment in Berkeley. They look for physical evidence and take statements from Patty's fiancé, Stephen Weed.
And I think I can make the same point.
They will fan out across the Bay Area to Oakland, San Francisco, and beyond, looking for clues. But they don't have much to go on. What little is known about the SLA comes from the tape recordings they make and send to local radio stations.
My name is Sin Q, and to my comrades I am known as Sin. I am a black man and a representative of black people. I hold the rank of General Field Marshal in the United Federated Forces of the Symbionese Liberation Army.
Sin Q is Donald DeFries, an escaped convict who commands the kidnappers. A group of 2 other men and 5 women. The symbiosis they see in their diversity inspires their name, the Symbionese Liberation Army.
They were not an army. They were a gang, I guess.
With the exception of Donald DeFries, who started down this path as a black prisoner, most of them were white, spoiled suburban children, living out some kind of fantasy, playing schoolyard games, but playing them with real guns and real bullets. They were terrorists, and they were great at capturing attention.
To those who above the hopes and future of our people, that the voice of their guns express the words of freedom. Death to the fascist insect that preys upon the life of the people.
Patty Hearst begins her time with the SLA as a victim.
Patty, I hope you're listening. You can rest assured that your mother and I and all the family will do everything we can to get you out.
The Hearst family, on a directive from the general of the SLA, prepared this food giveaway program.
Before Patty's release is even discussed, Hearst is told to give $70 in food to every poor person in California. He responds with a $2 million program. Then the SLA ups the ante to $4 million, and negotiations abruptly end.
The size of the latest demand of the SLA is far beyond my financial capabilities. Therefore, the matter is now out of my hand.
Mom, Dad, I've received the message you broadcast last Sunday. It was good to hear from you after so much silence, but what you had to say sounded like you don't care if I ever get out of here. I'm beginning to feel that the FBI would rather that I get killed than safely released.
A traumatized and isolated Patty Hearst begins to change.
Eventually she began, this is what happens to all kidnapped victims, she began to move closer to those who had taken her, because she began to see them as her salvation, her existence. And so that was the beginning of the turnaround.
I've been given the choice of 1, being released in a safe area, or 2, joining the forces of the Symbionese Liberation Army and fighting for my freedom and the freedom of all oppressed people. I have chosen to stay and fight. I have been given the name Tanya.
When Patty Hearst took the title of Tanya and said that she had joined the Symbionese Liberation Army, the mood of the country that I could perceive was that they believed her.
The transformation seems complete when Patty is filmed during an SLA bank robbery.
Greetings to the people. This is Tanya. On April 15th, my comrades and I expropriated $10,660.02 from the Sunset branch of the Hibernia Bank.
They rushed into the bank. They positioned themselves at certain spots. They shot somebody, as I recall. But their main mission seemed to be to get Patty Hearst on film holding that weapon.
Patty Hearst is front and center at San Francisco's Hibernia Bank. She fires no round, but in her hands is an M1 carbine. The FBI's mission immediately changes from rescue to capture.
I think we reluctantly accepted the fact that Patty Hearst was not a victim after she sent a tape indicating that she had joined the SLA. When she appeared at the Hibernia Bank, she was photographed with an automatic rifle, pretty conclusive that she had changed sides.
We were shocked. We were awestruck as a people.
It's devastating for her family.
One of the most vicious things I've ever seen or I've ever had happen to me. 60 days she was a lovely child, and 60 days later I had the picture of her in a bank with a gun in her hand.
Do you believe
it? How do you think anybody'd feel?
As you might imagine, when people saw Tanya dressed up like the SLA, holding a weapon, robbing a bank, it had a profound impact on the majority of people in America. I think they immediately fixated on the fact that Patty Hearst was an outlaw.
An outlaw who goes on at length to explain herself.
I was positioned so that I could hold customers and bank personnel who were on the floor. My gun was loaded, and at no time did any of my comrades intentionally point their guns at me. Our action of April 15th forced the corporate state to help finance the revolution.
After the Hibernia robbery, hiding becomes much more difficult for Patty and the SLA.
I don't know that there was a word that they were on their way to LA. I think there was more the word that they were moving around. They were looking for other places to go. The heat was too intense in the Bay Area.
Staying one step ahead of the law, the SLA leaves the San Francisco area and goes to Los Angeles. There, the police will go after them aggressively, Patty Hearst included. She is officially wanted as a material witness in the Hibernia bank robbery. But in such a vast city, how will the LAPD ever find these dangerous fugitives?